you, punk. You got to get ready for the big payback.
Let's get into some fantasy football talk moving on here on In The Huddle, and we will stay in Washington with this WFT quarterback situation. Unfortunately, Ryan Fitzpatrick was a guy that a lot of people had on their radar as a possible sleeper quarterback. He is obviously now out, hip subluxation, out 6 to 8 weeks. How do we feel about this? Are there any other quarterbacks in particular for any Ryan Fitzpatrick owners to target?
So we got to talk about, we talking fantasy here. Zay, I'll throw this over to you to start. Hey, whoever want to start this one off.
I got it. I think one quarterback out there that a lot of people didn't pick up, Jameis Winston, a guy who just threw 5 touchdowns this past weekend. He didn't have that many passing yards. The only thing was only 148. But I think he's going to pick up as the season goes on. There's a lot. He threw to a lot of targets, and I think he showcased that he's able to produce on a Saints team, and he didn't fold under pressure playing against the Packers or even Aaron Rodgers did for that sense. It was his first starting gig. I think a year and change. I could be mistaken though. Actually leading the team. So he did extremely well. I think he did exactly what the planning was, the blueprint to play against the Packers, and that was to make sure that Aaron Rodgers doesn't get on the field as much as possible. Make sure he's on the sidelines as much as possible. I think he did exactly what Sean Payton wanted him to do, play the play clock, and I think he did extremely well. He threw a couple times to Juwan Johnson and for touchdowns. He just looked extremely polished. He looked extremely comfortable as that starting QB. I think fantasy owners should look at him if you need a quarterback and say, okay, Jameis Winston is my guy for the foreseeable future.
I give you Derek Carr. He's 22% rostered. He's only rostered in 22% of leagues. He's available. He put up 435 yards last night. It's going to be a passing offense. Josh Jacobs is hurt right now. Kenyon Drake, they got over there to be that back catcher. He's going to play a lot of wide receiver. So you got Henry Ruggs, you got Brian Edwards. I don't have too much faith in the wide receivers of this team, of this Raiders team in fantasy, because, last night they wasn't getting a lot of targets unless you have Darren Waller, who I believe probably might overtake Kelsey this year at that tight end king spot. But Derek Carr is a guy that comes to mind because he's going to be in some battles. The defense is improving, but it's still not all the way there. That's going to mean he's going to have a lot of stats, especially when they go up against the teams in this division and a lot of shootouts against Kansas City in that sort. So I like Derek Carr as a guy to pick up off the waiver wire.
Yeah, both good options. I think when it comes to the quarterback position in fantasy, there's so many guys across the league. It's a deep position that you could possibly invest with. The guy I'm looking at, though, is Joe Exotic of the Bengals, Joe Burrow. I was super impressed with his performance on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. I was so impressed with his poise and how he just kept on throwing the ball down the field and his aggressiveness. And I think the Bengals could be a team where when they play good teams, they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I am very high on Joe Burrow. I think he could be a fantasy quarterback that makes some noise in the near future. And once again, I agree with Jameis. I agree with Derek Carr. All three of these guys could put up some big numbers. And once again, the quarterback position is so deep. So maybe a draft strategy to hinder to go further along later in later years.
Well, Joe Burrow is actually rostered in 85% of leagues. So if you were part of that 15%, and you see Joe Burrow there, then, yeah, what are you waiting for? He should be 100% rostered on every roster. I think he has the targets, too. And maybe they was worried about the ACL injury coming back from that. But I definitely advise Joe Burrow, and I definitely advise Carr and Winston. Winston, I like that pickup because, threw 5 touchdowns yesterday. He is the ball out down the field. They have the wide receivers to go out and get it. Deonte Harvest is a fast wide receiver. He's going to make plays. Marcus Callaway, we didn't call his name in week 1. I still think he's going to be called going forward. Chris Hogan, and then when Michael Thomas comes back, depending on if he wants to play in New Orleans. I like Jameis Winston a lot, too. 5,000 yards in Tampa. I believe he could replicate 4,000 yards over here with the Saints.
Another unfortunate injury, San Francisco 49ers running back Raheem Mosterty, he goes down with a knee injury, second year in a row, unfortunately for him, that he has been struggling. He is now out at least 8 weeks. I think the main takeaway here, guys, is this kid Elijah Mitchell, man. He looks pretty good. It was a huge surprise by Kyle Shanahan making Trey Sermon, the young rookie running back from Ohio State, inactive, benched for his first ever NFL game. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan, man, this is what makes him one of the best coaches in the league. You just never really know what's up his sleeve. and he finds this kid Elijah Mitchell out of legit nowhere. I don't really think there was a soul besides his parents that has ever heard of Elijah Mitchell before the games on Sunday, and he balled out for the 49ers. He looked really good.
I think when you look at a guy that you should pick up in your waiver, someone that's probably still available there because no one's looking at this team at all, is Mark Ingram. A guy had 26 touches against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I know that Texans team is something you don't want to look at. It's a sight for sore eyes, but they're a team that's going to require, I guess, a lot of rushing or like something in that nature. Rather, they pass a lot, they rush a lot, and Tyrod Taylor's a guy who doesn't throw the ball a lot. So I think when you look at Mark Ingram, he could see potentially 26 to 27 touches per game, and that could be potential higher rushing yards or a high amount of rushing touchdowns in a sense.
It's so hard to find fantasy running backs off the waiver wire is unreal. The league that I'm in, the other league that I'm in outside of Can You Dig Sports with y'all fellas, bro, there's literally nobody there. Every running back is picked up. Mark Ingram is actually only rostered in 21% of rosters, which is unreal considering the fact that running backs are not as expendable and you need a running back. So y'all got to pick him up. 21%, what are y'all doing? I wish my group was part of that 21% that is available for him. I would have picked him up. That's a good pickup. Raheem Mostert, I got him on my fantasy team. I had to put him on IR. I made the foolish mistake that there is. I probably cost myself a fantasy championship because I got an A, but it could have been an A+. But I took Raheem Mostert over DeAndre Swift, and I immediately bugged at it. I thought in the Kyle Shanahan-led offense he was going to be able to be that lead back. I didn't realize that they drafted Sherman to take away some of his touches. But even then, I still thought because they run the ball so much, he was still going to be able to produce. But I should have took into consideration his injury history. But I think DeAndre Swift being injured last year hurt my stock on him. So, yeah, it is what it is. Raheem Mostert is being dropped left and right.
I got one more person in mind that people could possibly look at, and he's a very underrated pick. A guy that not many people are looking at is Kenneth Gainwell. He's the backup running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. Miles Sanders, of course, he gets majority of the touches. So if you need somebody just to fill a gap in your team, Kenneth Gainwell, he just came off with 13 points in fantasy. He's a guy who scored a touchdown, and he got 10 carries. So if he could get a consistent 10 carries, that could probably work well for your team.
Damian Williams. That's one guy that I would pick up in the waiver wire. He was getting a lot of touches, not a lot, but a little bit with Ty Montgomery. Bears are going to want to keep Ty Montgomery fresh. You remember, Tariq Cohen is out. Damian Harris, I did see him on the field, a good amount, with some pass catching and some rushes. So they're going to want to keep Ty Montgomery fresh. Maybe Damian Harris is a guy that you will take a fly on in the waiver wire if you need a running back.
Moving on to some brutal wide receiver injuries. Jerry Judy, he injures his ankle. He's now out 4 to 6 weeks. Odell Beckham Jr., he didn't even play in week 1. Michael Gallup of the Cowboys, calf strain. He's out for 3 to 5 weeks. Boys, when you look at this receiver is going down, are there any possible guys to pick up? And when we look at these injuries, like what comes to mind? I'll start it off by saying this. I feel terrible for Jerry Judy, man. He was a guy that a lot of people were high on going into the season. That injury did not look good. Obviously, I think it's fortunate he's only going to be out 4 to 6 weeks because when it first happened, I thought it could have been much, much worse than that. But one thing about fantasy football is, especially in PPR leagues, like you have to trust your pass catchers. You have to be on guys that catch the ball a lot, guys that have just a ton of receptions. One guy that I am looking at, he's rostered in 66% of leagues right now. So in many leagues, he's still available. But I think Jalen Waddle is going to be the guy in Miami. His speed just jumps off of the television screen to me. Obviously, him and Tua are familiar playing with each other. I think if one Alabama receiver goes down in Jerry Judy, I'm hopping on the other one in Jalen Waddle in Miami.
I'll give you a guy right here, right? There's a couple. You can start at close to home with Denver and KJ Hamler. That's their home run hitter. That's going to be the guy that's going to step in. So you have to stay with the team first because somebody's going to take on that production of Jerry Judy. And I think that guy is going to be KJ Hamler. Christian Kirk, rostered in 15% of leagues, is a guy that I believe he scored 10 fantasy points on Sunday. He's, got a couple deep balls, and he's still involved in the offense, either him or Rondell Moore. But I would lean more close to Christian Kirk because that passing attack, that, bootleg air raid is not fully air raid, but it is partially air raid. Kyler Murray's gonna swing the ball all over. You know, D-Hop's gonna have his touches. Christian Kirk gonna have his touches. And, you know, I ain't like what I see from AJ Green. I'm gonna keep it real. AJ Green looked like he just got picked up off the couch. He had no speed on his legs at all. So I think Christian Kirk is probably gonna step in and be that next guy.
I think one receiver that we look at that gets overlooked, even though he's from the team that's in the Big Apple, the Mecca, is a basketball, of course, not football. But Sterling Shepard. 9 targets. He got 9 targets this past weekend, and I don't know if it's going to be a consistent 9 targets, but it seems like right now he's Daniel Jones' favorite go-to receiver in a sense. Even after only 1 week, yeah, he seemed like he looked for him to get those targets opposed to any other receiver on the roster. He's only rostered at 39%, so he should be available in majority of the league, 61% of leagues out there. So I think he's still available to go and grab. He just had 20 points as well, so that's another great addition to your team if you're missing out on a Jerry Judy, or if you're not, you know. So I think that's someone that you could really look at, Sterling Shepard. Someone else that you could possibly, and he's not really a favorite to get selected, is Tim Patrick, Denver Broncos. He's Teddy Bridgewater just showcased a passing barrage. He passed it all over the field. So I think Tim Patrick could be a benefactor of that, and could possibly get you some high touches, targets down the line. I think Teddy Bridgewater, he did a fantastic job against the Giants, painting the field, essentially giving everyone a target here and there. So I think Tim Patrick could be a benefactor by getting some touchdowns down the line and some certain games, certain favorites.
I'll take a flyer on Bryan Edwards. Now, I know that first half wasn't good, but if any indication of that fourth quarter that he had carrying into overtime is any indication that he will get the ball like that going forward, then you take a flyer on him, right? I'm not totally on the bandwagon. He's only 19% rostered right now, so he's available. Darren Waller, obviously, is going to be the target magnet on that team, but still, I'll take a flyer on him. Push comes to shove. He don't produce, you drop him. Simple as that.
Any other comments on the other two wide receivers I mentioned? Odell Beckham went down. I liked what Anthony Schwartz provided for the Browns. He's a speedster, a guy that is just one of the more pure, faster players in the NFL. I think, look, Michael Gallup going down. Zay, I know you're going to be happy. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, their stock is to the moon right now, considering Dak Prescott and the way he looked. Any other last comments on these other wide receivers who went down?
I think, you know what, Michael Gallup, it's tough, and I think it's going to make Cooper and CeeDee Lamb's job, I think, a little bit even tougher, because I think when you had Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, and Cooper on the field, it's difficult for defenses to defend all three of those receivers. Those three guys can really, any one of those three guys can really go off at any moment because they're really good receivers. I think Michael Gallup was one of the more underrated receivers, because I think before even CeeDee Lamb was there, Gallup was the guy who was like the receiver two, a guy who could really catch the ball, make plays on his feet. And I think him being out 3 to 5 weeks, it seemed like when he got tackled, his ankle popped out, and it looked like it was like I guess they popped it back in. It was like a gruesome injury. It looked like, but I only have a 3 to 5 week calf strain. I'm glad that it was only a strain on a leg injury, and hopefully comes back sooner than later. But maybe you look at a guy like probably Nelson Aguilar, someone who just had 18 points this past week, and I think a guy who could really like I said, fill out the roster if you're having injuries on those receiving corps. Odell Beckham Jr. is so unfortunate that he didn't play week 1, and I hope the injuries are not continuing to linger as the season goes on, because Odell Beckham Jr. is a talent that could really showcase, could really torpedo your team to a championship potentially in fantasy. But hopefully he's ready for week 2 and he continues to play as the season goes on.
I'm not touching Odell, but I won't be mad if somebody seen him on the waiver wire. If he is on the waiver wire, I could get that up for y'all in a second. I'm going to see how much leagues he's rostered in. But maybe you take a fly on Odell Beckham Jr. and hope that the chemistry with him and Baker Mayfield is developed and he gets back on the football field firstly. Cedric Wilson is a guy that I believe, Zay, to your point about the Cowboys, you know, CeeDee Lamb and Amari having a little trouble with Gallup out. I disagree. Cedric Wilson is a guy that I like from that Cowboys team. Is very fast, and he made some plays, especially in that game against Seattle. I remember watching that game, and he made a lot of plays in that game. So I think, you know, the offense is going to be totally fine until Michael Gallup returns. So CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, expect big production from both of those guys as you got in week 1 going down the line.
Yep. So moving on to our next fantasy football segment, waiver wire pickups. We all hinted to a bunch of guys that possibly come to mind. Is there one that if you're asking like who is the one guy in terms of my priority that I need to make sure I'm getting? Who is that guy and why? I guess I'll start this one off. I'll have to go with Elijah Mitchell of the 49ers. This kid looked like he's going to be a big-time player. Mostert going down. We know that Kyle Shanahan loves to implement the running game. Mitchell is also a kid that could catch some passes as well. He would be my number one guy in terms of waiver wire pickups.
I will probably go with Rondale Moore. Rostered in 27% of leagues, because I do believe he's going to turn up in the middle of the season, and he can possibly be that steal that wins you your fantasy league, right? I like Christian Kirk early, but I do believe as the rookie gets acclimated into the NFL, he's very speedy. He's going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of volume, especially going down the line. So that's a guy that could be a steal, that could be a gem that can win you your fantasy league. That guy is the truth. He's fast. He's going to be in a heavy passing attack, air raid type of offense, and he's going to get those numbers towards the end of the year. That could be a steal to win your fantasy league.
I say Christian Kirk. I think if he's available, of course, on your league, pick him up immediately. They're playing against the Minnesota Vikings team that just gave up a bunch of passing yards. So you want to go after Christian Kirk because you know that Kyler Murray is definitely going to have a game of the century, essentially. So he's gonna really explode against that Minnesota Vikings defense, and I think Christian Kirk can really be a big factor in if you win or lose this week.
Yeah, I agree. Short term, I will go Christian Kirk. So we kind of on the same page because week 2, if we focusing on week 2, then definitely Christian Kirk is your guy, no doubt. But I think long term, Rondale Moore would probably get that spot going down the line, that number 3 spot. But I agree 100% with the picks that y'all both made for the waiver wire. There's one thing that I just want to make a point about Zay is that we made a trade, right? And Zach, I want to know your thoughts, and I kind of know what you're going to say, but I'm going to explain to you. So me and Zay made a trade with Mike Williams and Debo Samuel. I had Debo Samuel. I traded for Mike Williams. I'm very high on Mike Williams this year. Debo Samuel, I believe, was the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy this Sunday. I don't believe that's going to be the case every week because I do believe they're going to run the ball a lot, and Brandon Ayuk is probably going to take away that target, and then also George Kittle is going to take away some volume. So I think it was a 1-week number 1 Debo Samuel. I like what I saw from Mike Williams, getting 8 receptions. He's playing more in the slot now. He's playing the X position. I think he's going to get more targets in a high passing attack with Justin Herbert. What do you think about that trade? Was I losing my mind by trading Debo Samuel, or do you think it's an even trade? What are your thoughts?
It's tough, man, because I really like Debo Samuel. I had him on my breakout player list before the season started going in, and I think that he looked really good on Sunday. Ayuk, I don't know what happened to him, man. Like it didn't even look like he was getting many snaps. I really don't know what.
I think he was hurt. I think he was hurt, and he was a late scratch off the injury report. That's what I think what happened with him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like Kyle Shanahan is one of those coaches where, like, you just don't really know what's going on through his mind. But when I look at these two players, like, one thing that comes to mind, I think the winner of your trade is going to be whichever player could stay on the field. Both of these players have had some tough times staying healthy throughout their careers. Mike Williams looked good. I liked how Justin Herbert was really looking at him towards the game. But I think that's going to be the key to this trade, dude. I think whatever player is able to stay healthy and can stay on the field is going to win it. But look, if you could tell me like right now who is both of them are going to be healthy, like who's the better player going to be, it's tough. I would lean Debo just because I think he has the better chance of being the number 1 wide receiver for his team. Keenan Allen had some clutch catches, but I think like he's going to be a guy that puts up some big time monster numbers going forward. I like both players a lot. I think that's going to be the key. Who could stay healthy for each team?
I think it was a pretty even trade, to be honest with you. Like, I think both, it was like an even trade. That was one of the trades where it's not lopsided. It's literally even. It's basically projection. Who you think is going to have the better season between Mike Williams and Debo Samuel. So, yeah, we'll see what happens with that.